Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Jason.
With me today is life coach and LOA teacher Joel Elston.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
And of course, it's Tuesday once again. That's when Joel and I get onto the StreamYard here and have these really interesting conversations that go down the nearest rabbit hole, or sometimes the far away rabbit hole. But we always find rabbit holes. And the nice thing about these rabbit holes, well, first of all, there's no rabbits in them, so it's kind of, it's just free and clear. But secondly, they take us into some really interesting conversational areas. And I think the same thing's going to happen today because we're talking about a topic that's based, once again, on a book that Joel has been reading called The Tao of Allowing. And I love the subtitle, Surfing on the Law of Attraction. Like that, man, that like hits us right where we live, right, Joel? I mean, that's what we talk about every time.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah, it really is. And this really hits home with a lot of the stuff that we talk about. And, the whole point of the Tao, definition is vague but often referred to as sort of the natural order of things in Eastern philosophy. And when most people that try to use the law of attraction, they believe that the manifesting is in what you're expecting, what you're believing. But to me, the biggest thing that we have to discover is the allowing piece. And allowing has multiple aspects to it, and it is probably really the law of allowing that allows the law of attraction to happen, because the natural order of the universe is to these things that we want to be fulfilled, but it's us that we have trouble allowing them to happen. And there's a lot of reasons we don't realize we're not allowing them. It's an amazing thing when you realize what is keeping me from what I want is often the inability to allow it to happen. And that this gets into it in the surfing, the surfing concept, because it's sort of, skimming above things is sort of a good idea when you're able to, you don't want it too bad. You don't want to go all in. You want to be able to and the surfing sort of it fits in a perfect analogy in some ways for how I sort of see this works.
I tend to agree with that, in part because this allowing piece is really all about allowing not just whatever it is going to happen, but the way it's going to happen, which I find to be both enticing and aggravating in equal measures. Because it's enticing because, well, okay, that's where all the good stuff is. And it's aggravating because you never know how the hell you're going to get there.
Right. Right. And a lot of people's personality do not allow that to happen.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah. And, because the concept that we have to attract a specific way for something to come to us, or, the idea that the essence of what we're trying to attract is often delivered. We don't realize that sometimes because we're not allowing it. We're not allowed to see it. Also, allowing has a whole nother context as well, that they talk about in this book as well, is it's just not me allowing, it's me allowing you to do you, so to speak. The idea that, you allow others to exist, you allow others' reality to take place and not be triggered by that. Allowing is a very important part of all of this. And in today's society, we in general spend a lot of time, a lot of energy not allowing others, or really frustrated that others don't see it the way we see it, or do it the way they do it. And it's just this whole idea that does affect us. It does affect where we're at, because that's part of that energy blocking us getting what we're wanting.
Yeah, that really is it. Interesting, too, how that has kind of taken on a life of its own over the, last, 40, 50 years, something like that. Because I can remember when the dominant philosophy was just essentially the same way of understanding, just said differently, live and let live. I'm going to live my life, you live your life, no big deal. That's kind of fallen by the wayside. And I'm not quite sure how that happened, to be honest.
I have my theory on that is social media in general. It allowed the extremists, it allowed the loudest, it allowed a lot of people and people that had a tendency to say, well, that's no big deal, it doesn't bother me. But when you get the movements following, well, this is wrong or this is wrong, you empower people a lot of times to sort of follow the crowd and to believe that this is horrible, and we're gonna go chase this, and you can't have that, and we're gonna. Social media offers a lot of great stuff, and it's not the answer to all of our problems. It isn't the cause of all of our problems, but it does. The social media's intended consequences. It empowered a lot of people that were sort of isolated in their thoughts, and they were just sort of there. But the racist, or the far left or the far right, or there's people that have these extremist views that pretty much kept them to themselves, or very low key. That found a bunch of like-minded people because just the pure numbers of it all, and they are given the illusion of being empowered by their belief system.
And not just politics either, because this applies really to all areas of life. So people, for instance, who would poo-poo a particular way of parenting, or a particular way of meeting with friends, or a particular way of going on vacation, or whatever it might be, whatever that mindset is, they find other people the same mindset. Finding your tribe, right? That's the thing that people want to do these days. They find their tribe, and a very, very kind of scary / annoying thing that happens when you find your tribe is we all have a tendency to kind of start dissing the other tribe. It's not like that was what was originally intended by Find Your Tribe, but it kind of goes along with it for many people.
Well, it does. And there was a time in politics where you would talk about what you would do. Here's my vision of America. Here's my plan. Here's how I'll fix the deficit. Here's what I would do. And you would present your plan.
Right.
And nobody talks about their plan anymore. They just talk about attacking the other people.
Right.
And it's not even about they're not even really attacking the other people's plans. They're just attacking the other people. And it's very effective because if I paint my opponent as somebody that's going to take away whatever value to you, they might take away your guns, or they might take away your right to have an abortion, or they might so you get, oh my God, these people are out to take away my rights. And now you have empowered people in a whole different way, that they must speak up. They must, because my way of living is going to be taken away. So that's a big piece of it, I believe, as well.
I think you're right. The fact that this book is titled The Tao of Allowing also reinforces for me that when we have these kinds of conversations, and when not just this kind that you and I have here, but when in general, like you said, through social media, or just, out in society at large, when we have these various kinds of confrontations, conversational confrontations where, I believe this and you got to respect that and all this other kind of stuff, we forget about the allowing piece entirely. The allowing just kind of, it slips through the cracks. It's almost like it disappears from the conversation. Right?
Yes, it does. And that's, you're exactly right. It just, you get so focused on, you must accept, like there's a narrative, and a mini rabbit hole will open up. There's a narrative that factually, scientifically, humans have evolved. We're evolution. We have evolved. And that's the answer. That's the complete, in a nutshell, answer. And if any scientist disagrees with that, then on any level, then, oh my gosh, you're crazy, you're whatever, you're just, and the truth, and you can get canceled, you can be, you're not scientific. Well, it's more nuanced than that. There is still some missing information in there that, possibly could be interpreted another way. And if you even discuss that information, or you open a whole new, oh my gosh, well, you're not scientific, or, the idea that there's a narrative by one side, and I'm not on any side of these things, but one side that, the vaccine is dangerous and negative, or if you take the vaccine, you're a sheep, there's this entrenched ideas that you have a narrative that you must fulfill, and there's no allowing in that. And I'm very much an allower. I am really just, I really don't care what grown people do, on any level. You go take care of that's been my philosophy for a long time. And I really, I try not to sit in judgment of any of it. It's when you tell me I have to see it a certain way that sends me in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And speaking of rabbit holes, let me go a little off on a tangent here, because you mentioned the science and people wanting to say, well, this science proves that. How could you think otherwise, and so forth. It's interesting to me. I've mentioned this before, but it's interesting to me how we've kind of lost track of what science really is. And not just the general populace at large. I would say the various scientific fields themselves in many ways have lost track of what science really is. And the evidence of that is any time that someone uses the words scientific proof, you know they've gone off track.
Yes.
Because the reason I say that is there is no such thing as scientific proof. Science doesn't prove anything. It has never proved anything. Science has never been about proving anything. The purpose of science was never to prove anything. The purpose of science was to gather evidence and then create theories about it to understand what the evidence could possibly be suggesting to us.
Right.
But there's no proof in any of that. How interesting that we got into this realm where all of a sudden, well, this is scientifically proven and that's scientifically unproven. How the heck did we get there?
One of our favorite topics you and I universally agree on, and we do on most things, by the way, but the placebo effect, for example, is something that you hear scientists or you hear doctors say, well, that's just the brain believing that it was healed, so it did the healing, or it doesn't count, or because it doesn't matter. Again, that's another point. I have evidence. I've witnessed it firsthand personally, and for my clients, the placebo effect is an incredibly effective tool.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I also am of the same belief. If you have a real serious infection of your appendix and it needs to come out this evening, Joel is not going to tell you well, let's just try to envision a healthy appendix. I'm not. I'm going to say, get your butt to the ER and get that thing taken out before it explodes. Yes. But yet there's this, somehow you got to be one or the other. You know what I mean? And that's what drives me crazy. So, but I think a lot of this is, it gets into the category of allowing, and the traditional concept of allowing, starting with the law of attraction, is what do we allow for ourselves? Like if I want to manifest that, we were talking about, I'm looking at some houses on some lakes, and I have a real nebulous idea that I'm going to be buying a house on, Smith Mountain Lake, maybe Lake Gaston, maybe, I don't know where, but I'm looking. I'm going to attract that. I'm going to make that happen. It simply means I need to find it and buy it. That's all I really need to do here. But,
sure.
The idea that if I get stuck on the minutia of it, or I get stuck on, the certain things, I'm not allowing the process to happen. If I get stuck on, I have to have this certain way for this to happen or this to happen for that to happen, then I'm not allowing the process as it needs to exist. The law of attraction works best when you have the idea of what you're trying to attract, and then you just sort of turn it over, so to speak. You just let it do its thing. But we have a tendency to want to control the outcomes, or we want to, I want it to be this way, or I think this is the only way to get this done, so I want to have it done this way, and it doesn't work that way. But we don't allow things to happen because we sometimes get, Mike Dooley, I like Mike Dooley's stuff, a lot of his stuff, and he used to, what he called the cursed howls. You get stuck with a howl too.
Yes.
And, no, if you want it, the essence of, when I say I want a house on the lake and I have a vision of what I want that to be, it needs to be on the lake. I need some boats. I need these things in my mind, what I want it to look like. But I got the essence of that. So I'm going to attract the essence of that, and I'll have it. But if I get really stuck in the details and the how-to, now I'm really limiting what I want to be able to attract. It's just going to be and I'm open to all ideas. I'm not just stuck on going and finding a house. Like one of my friends suggested, he's on Smith Mountain Lake, and he said, well, what he did was he bought this small house right on the lake, and there was a lot next to it. So he bought the house that was already there, lived in it, and then built a really nice house right next to it. And then tore his old house down and then sold the lot and did real well,
Wow.
So, there's things like that can be done. I never would have thought about something like that. So by allowing the concepts, by allowing what you're trying to attract, and that includes whatever, not blocking it with negativity where, or having low expectations, or it's never worked before, so I'm not allowed, that's a really difficult thing to not get caught in, because we don't allow often, we don't realize we're not doing that. So this book gets into the details of and again, I use that surfing image of sort of skimming above what you want, knowing what it is, but the essence of what it is what you're really trying to attract. And the law of attraction is flawless when you don't get stuck on some of the things that don't allow it to happen.
How interesting, though, that we do, like you say, get stuck on it having to happen. It has to happen a certain way. And because we get stuck on it, we get exactly the opposite of what we're looking for. Instead of getting a quick result, we get a result that either never shows up or takes years to show up.
Right.
Exactly the opposite of what we're looking for. All
Yeah.
because we're saying, I got to have it this way.
Yes. So I worked with this lady, and this was a unique person. I'd never really had anybody come to me with this. And she set the appointment. She said, I want to talk to you about the law of attraction, which always excites me.
Sure.
People that make appointments specifically to talk about that is always exciting to me. So I was like,
and getting paid for it too. I mean, my goodness.
It was great. And I always end up talking about law of attraction, but seldom am I asked to start off with it. You know what I mean? It's usually just a tool, not the point. So her goal was, she was working at this small accounting firm, and her boss, or friend, let's say friend, I'm not sure exactly. There's a male counterpart there that, let's call it just a coworker.
Sure.
And they were at a party one night, and they ended up making out. He's married with kids. She's married with kids, but she has convinced herself that she's in love with this guy.
Okay.
And she said, how do I attract this guy?
Mm.
And he was very clear, like, look, that shouldn't have happened. I'm going to tell my wife, I'm not doing this. I'm going to love my wife, and I do not want to leave my wife. But she wants to overpower that and bring him in. He says, how can I attract him into my life?
Right.
And now her marriage is not good at all. They've been talking about divorce and all that. So, I said, I'm trying to explain to her. I said, look, you're stuck on, this man's married. He doesn't want this. You can't out-attract that. Now, if you're looking at getting divorced and finding another man, and maybe he's there to represent the qualities of what you want, then you certainly can attract somebody, but you are stuck on attracting. She's not allowing for the law of attraction to bring her a healthy relationship that maybe this guy's sort of a model for. What she's doing is saying, I want this guy. And it's just not going to happen. It's not. I mean, because she is so stuck on that as the only thing, there's two people involved here. He is really into fixing his relationship. He went and told his wife this happened. They're seeing a marriage counselor.
Wow.
They're doing well.
Wow.
She's not going to outdo that.
Yeah.
But yet she is stuck on that. So we often will get stuck on a certain job instead of the essence of a job. The idea that I want to, for me, I remember when I originally moved to Virginia from South Carolina, the gentleman that taught me into moving up here had opened up a treatment center that literally matched the exact treatment center that I wanted to open. It was amazing. It was on 400 acres of land. It was beautiful. It wanted to introduce multiple modalities, and some traditional, some non-traditional hypnotherapy, law of attraction. We use that in the concept. Nobody ever had done that before. Physical exercise, good nutrition. So he literally opened up the treatment center that I envisioned opening up. And I came to work for him. Now, I ran the center. It was my center to run, but I attracted that. Now, in my mind, I always thought it was going to be my treatment center. It was going to be mine. Well, I wouldn't, I attracted it, but I attracted it working for someone else. And, in the end, I was there for 5 years. That didn't work out, but I moved on. But I did attract that. But also, if you look at this, that led me to Virginia. That led me to my private practice, that I'm able to still affect it in the same general essence of what I was trying to do. Now I don't have a boss. Now I get to do what I want to do. I now have an impact that I wanted to make. The essence of what I wanted to do is been completely fulfilled.
I like that phrase, the essence of it, because the essence of it is really what we're aiming for, even if we don't think that we are. We often will kind of, skim past that part, talk about the surfing, right? Because that was your surfing analogy. We kind of skim past that, but really what we should be doing is skimming on top of it. We should be riding that wave. Because that's actually how you get there.
I allowed this, when I left the facility that I was at before, it was sort of shocking because it was, I've shared that story a few times. It was the last minute, Saturday morning firing / quitting. Don't know which one happened first, but we both have different stories. But the part for me was I realized, wait a minute, I'm going to allow this to happen. I'm going to allow whatever flows. I didn't have to fight. I mean, I was offered an office to begin my private practice. I didn't have to fight for clients. I allowed them to just show up. I was full within a few weeks, making plenty of money. And I've been able to implement, also have been able to do different things. As you know, I'm advocating for therapeutic use of psilocybin.
Right.
That's one of my things that I'm working on right now. And I never would have been able to do that in the role I was in before, because my ultimate goal was to be able to bring new solutions to addiction, because the way we treat addiction in this country is really bad. We do it very poorly, and we have very low success rates. So coming up with new ways to do that and improving those, that was the ultimate goal in that. So yes, I wanted a treatment center, but it wasn't the ego of a treatment center. I wanted a conduit to be able to offer different ways to help improve the success rate of addiction treatment. Well, I ended up with beyond what I imagined, but I had to allow it doesn't look remotely like I intended years ago.
So that raises the very important question. If we want to avoid that trap of trying to force something to happen in a particular way, if we want to be more allowing about it, are there guidelines? Are there rules for us to follow that help us do that more effectively?
Well, the book discusses some concepts that help, and I have my own concepts that roughly match that. It's always trying to break down what again, I keep using that word, don't use it over and over, but what is the point of what I'm trying to attract? Am I, when you want to attract a relationship, for example, why do I want a relationship? What is it that I'm seeking with a relationship? I want a companion. I want somebody to be able to talk to. Have the details of what you're trying to attract, not just the vision of the perfect person you want to meet, but what comes along with that? What's that feel like to have that? If I want to, I want to attract a lot of money. Why? What do you want to attract a lot of money for? Get specific, not in the how you get there, but what's going to look like when you do that? What's the point of having money? And
there's also another part of that too, which is that the vision that we have today may morph into a different vision tomorrow, and then the day after and the day after. So we have to be ready for that shifting that takes place, just because our experience leads us to wanting it a little bit differently.
And the tying into last week's show, I had mentioned that I was at the bench, and my concept of Anna Maria Island in general it changed, and I didn't think I necessarily wanted to be there anymore, to retire or whatever you want to call that. I won't retire, but live there in the next 20 years or whatever. But what I've done with that since the show, that's why I'm looking at places at Smith Mountain Lake, or I'm looking at places at Lake Gadsden. I now understand there's been an evolution of what I was attracting.
Yeah.
I'm not stuck on just going to that one place. It's the essence of what I felt back in 1995 on Anna Maria Island at that bench. I'm seeking the essence of that, not that place. So it'll evolve. And we may talk next week, and I might have bought a home in Utah. You know me. Anything can happen. But
anything at all.
Anything. There's unlimited possibility. You can't, nothing too ridiculous to be to consider. You know me.
Absolutely.
But within that, I see, just in my own personal life, I see how my little things, the changes that I see in what I've thought of, I'm not just hell bent that I had to be at that specific place. I'm open to the idea of what I've been inviting, what I've been bringing in. Let that adjust. That's the beauty. Let me allow it to unfold. And I promise you, whatever unfolds it will end up being the absolute perfect scenario. It will be, I can't believe this fell into my lap kind of thing.
I'm loving what we're doing with this topic, particularly this last bit where we're talking about how it can evolve, how we think about it one way and then we find that the way we were thinking about it doesn't really work anymore. So now we're shifting it over to something else. I like that a lot, in part because a lot of teachers of law of attraction emphasize focusing on the end result. You were talking about focusing on just a few moments ago. What's the end result feel like? What does it look like? What's the experience like?
Right.
And that's a really good approach. Neville Goddard spent a lot of time talking about that in his writing, really very, very well. But the one thing that I'm realizing is missing from most of those teachings, including from Neville's actually, is this idea of an evolving endpoint, that the endpoint can shift over time. And that not only is that okay, it's actually essential to kind of keep checking in with yourself and seeing, has my vision changed? Has my desire shifted in some way? Have I perhaps shifted in a way that allows me to leave behind a bench in Anna Maria Island in favor of a cottage on Smith Mountain Lake or something along that line?
Absolutely. And within that, because also when you look at how we change, one of my favorite things, I mean, again, growing up in Central Florida, such a beautiful place, and we're always out in the sun all summer. We go to the beach. That's a great lifestyle, and I loved it. But the beach has always been my place.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. The beach is always it. And so I'm just assuming the beach is always my place. However, when it was literally, the feels like temperature was 118 degrees on the beach with no breeze, the beach was not my place.
Not really, no.
The sand, it was gross. It was sweaty. It was, it was not my place. I realized, I love the idea of that first 30-degree day or that first snowfall that you'll never see in Florida. So I've evolved. I'm a different person than I was when these original goals were established, or when I wanted to try to. So I have to accept that I've evolved as a human. What matters to me, I don't like. I'm not a big person to go to parties. I'm not, because I talk so much for a living. I spend so much time with people. I really enjoy alone time. I never feel lonely. I am not a lonely person ever. Mm-hmm. Alone time for me is exciting. It's fun, or my brain's always got something going. It doesn't mean I isolate, as I'm saying. I still enjoy people, but the idea that I could sit on my cabin and overlook the lake as I'm writing or doing our podcast, what an amazing thing,
And that's really about self-knowledge. I mean, you were talking about how much you love the beach and how that evolved over time. And one thing I've known for a couple of years now, actually a few years now, is that I do like beaches as long as I have a canopy. I can't handle direct sunlight for a whole day on the beach, but if I have a canopy that can provide shade, I like that. But ultimately, what I really like about it is the water itself. I like the sound. I like the sound of water. I like it even more than I like the sight of water. I love the sight of water, but I like the sound even more.
Yes.
And when I started to realize that, I started thinking about it differently. That's why I always knew that I could either be on an ocean or on a lake. Either one would be fine. And then I realized it's because they have different sounds. Oceans sound a whole lot noisier and so forth than a lake does. Lakes have these very quiet lapping sounds. Oceans have these, dramatic white noise sound. But I love them both.
Yes.
I love both of them. And it's the sound of water that I really crave. So that, just identifying that element of it, I feel like that's bringing me closer to where I want to be. Because if I'm just looking on that element, it's a lot harder to get wrapped up in the other pieces that I would attach to, because that's what the opposite of allowing is, right? It's attaching to something.
Exactly.
And if I'm not attaching to all the, it's got to be on the beach in Chesapeake, and it's got to be 50 feet wide, and I like the water.
You like the water. You like the feeling, how you feel by water. And there's some science behind that too, of, being by water. There's a lot of people, and I like the mountains. I like that cloudy, weird gray day in the mountains where the clouds are, they're sort of in the mountains. It's a weird feeling. I like that too. I didn't realize I like that. So, once you allow yourself to really know what you've become, I'm not the same person that I was at 16. Thank goodness. I'm not, that person was hard to deal with. And
I know the feeling.
So, so to assume that I'm into the same thing. So the ability, it would be totally wrong. So the ability to not just allow the process to happen, allow the progression of what we've attracted, and not get stuck, the idea that if I were to force myself to move to Anna Maria Island next year, And again, it's a beautiful place. And I'm not
Sure.
saying couldn't figure out how to be happy there. But again, if I want to go to a restaurant and there's a 2 hour wait or it's 100-degree weather, they're facing a hurricane surge this weekend or
Right.
tomorrow, we would probably have to go into town and, and it's like, and I'm like, why am I stuck on that concept again? And because it was an old concept, the idea that I want money or I want things, when I understand what am I going to do with money? What's the point of money? That money comes much freer I'm not saying I have to have an exact plan of how I'm spending it, but I like to be generous. I like to help people. I like to buy what I want to buy. There's a lot of reasons. I like the freedom of money. Freedom, money doesn't hold any real value to me other than it offers me freedom. It offers me choices.
Which is a huge value. That's a great value right there, by the way.
Absolutely. And I can get what I want to get. And there's security and stability with money. And I've had a lot of instability in my life. So money fills a lot of those voids, but the sake of money, just to have money, it's really disappointing. But the security that it offers, the options that it offers, is wonderful. And so I've identified what I want, and this applies to relationships, or this applies to, what are we not allowing built on sort of pre-envisioned roadblocks, or what we don't want. All these things that we keep thinking, well, it has to be this way. We're not allowing the law of attraction to operate fully because you're blocking the essence of what you're inviting, not what you just are stuck on what you're inviting.
Well, one of the things that we know for sure is that, and I love the way Abraham Hicks expresses this one because they say it very well. Once you know what you don't want, that puts you really close to what you do want. In fact, you almost have to know what you don't want before you can know what you actually want. So now that we've identified what we don't want to be attached to something. We don't want to slow something down by making it a certain way, a certain thing, and so forth. So let's flip that around. What do we want? I mean, what is it to allow? What does allowing feel like? What is the experience of it? How can we describe, if we were going to try to describe allowing to somebody who had never allowed before, how would we describe it?
And I'm going to use a word because it doesn't normally fit here, but to be able to detach. To step back, detach. And detachment has, in psychological terms, that's not always the best term, but for the sake of what we do, to just sort of, okay, it's like putting your hand, it's like allowing a feather to land in your hand without moving your hand. It's either going to hit or not. It's just, you're going to just envision that. Just put it out there. Feather's going to fall. It's either going to hit or it's not going to hit. The allowing of things to fall into place. What I liked about the title of this book, the Tao of Allowing, the natural order of allowing. We got to get out of it. So allowing is identifying again the essence of what you're seeking, and be amazed at when it happens. That's the part that So when it does happen, we were talking about enthusiasm and stuff before the show about, just some stuff you have going on. And, the conduit that really helps is like, I love to be surprised when something I manifested shows up. Like, oh, well, that was cool. It had nothing to do with it.
That's a really valid and interesting point. And the reason I say that is I can think of a number of times in my life, the first one being roughly around 2014, when we moved from Virginia back to Connecticut. There was a period of time there, particularly December 2013, January 2014, where I had to do a lot of allowing, and I wasn't comfortable with it. It wasn't fun because I had so many attachments that I was trying to let go of. And yet I'm in the middle of a whirlwind that was going on at that time because so many things were shifting. So many issues were ironing themselves out. I mean, it was exciting in one sense. As I look back on it, it's like, wow, all this stuff manifested that I can't believe it all manifested. But when you're in the middle of it, it's like, my guest yesterday referred to, he said it's like standing in the eye of the, what was the phrase he used? The cyclone of stuff. And when you're standing in the eye of it and all that stuff is just flying by and it's just, it's dizzying. It's dizzying in its effect. And then to see that as exciting, my first time through, that wasn't exciting. My first time through, it was terrifying, which is, by the way, the flip side of exciting, If you're not excited by it, you're probably terrified. They kind of go like that. Getting from terrified to excited is is really what I think a lot of this stuff is all about, learning how to do that. Because we have this built-in tendency to believe that it's going to be terrifying, whatever the shift is, whatever the change is, that thing is just going to scare the bejesus out of us. So of course we don't want to have that happen because, oh my God, I'd be just terrified.
It's
when
programmed.
in fact, well, it is programmed. Yeah. Yeah. But in fact, if we can actually learn somehow, some way to just kind of let go of that fear, that terror turns into excitement. It's a really interesting transition.
When you get convinced that this stuff works, and I use the example of leaving my job in 2013, the treatment center. I left work on a Friday. Everything was normal as it could be. Had no idea. I get a call from the owner of the building. He was very angry about a very minute, very tiny, silly thing. I was really sick of his yelling and screaming, and it just boom happened. I've always envisioned, I envisioned having this dream I always had, but it wasn't. I accepted, hey, well, maybe clearly this wasn't it. I just left that job, but I also was in such a place. I've seen so much of this work. I said, I just can't wait to see how this works out. And I did nothing to make it work out. That's the part that most people don't get. I said, I'll see what happens.
Yeah.
My friend and mentor, Dr. Sherman Master, he called me and said, heard you left. Got an office in my suite of offices. We'd like for you to join us. I said, what do I do? And he goes, you can be a life coach. I'll send you clients. I said, sounds like a winner to me. And mentally I was prepared. I think I mentioned this. I should tell the story. I had quite a bit of money saved up. So I was like, if I go a year without making money, I'm good, or very minimal money. Well, I ended up finishing the year making more money than I would have if I'd stayed at the company. Because I never advertised. I never spent a penny on an advertisement. And again, I just allowed all that to happen and just was fascinated that it kept happening.
Did you, when you were first experiencing that, the early stage of that shift, you had that to do with your former boss, in which either you quit or he let you go, one way or the other. That's the point where usually the stress kicks in, where the fears kick in and so forth. Did you have any point there where you were feeling the fear and you let go of it, or did you just not feel the fear at all?
The moment it happened, I never felt ironically, the only time I felt fear, and I called my mom later that day, and just to let her know. And my mom, who is a very anxious person who worries all the time, she's passed away. So, so I'm not speaking ill of her, but she was, had a lot of that stress and anxiety. So I called. Her first reaction, she goes, oh my God, can you call him back and apologize? Can you get your job back? And I said, no, I want to see what's happened. She goes, son, that was a really high paying job. What are you going to do? You have a son. You have two sons. TJ was grown at the time. And he said, you can't be without an income. And I go, well, I'm good. I'm good. But there was a moment after hanging up with her going, maybe she's right. Maybe I should. And I'm like, stop it. I don't want to be like my mom in the way she was anxious and all this stuff. So I quickly, I realized that's just not, I let that energy go. And the timing, which even reinforced it, on a Saturday, that event happened. The following a week, not the next day Sunday, but a week from that Sunday, I had already had a flight reserved to go down to Florida and spend time at the bench before all this happened. So it's literally like, I just took that as a sign and said, wow, I've already planned a trip to the bench. I'll just sit there. And it was during that trip that I got a call from Dr. Master. It just all unfolded. So there was never, other than a brief moment after my, sort of buying into my mom's fear there for a minute, she brought me to that level, but I quickly dismissed that. And that was the only time. And I never looked back. I never had a moment of, when I went and got my business checking account, the guy said, one thing I did just to make sure I have really good credit. I had established a personal account with him. He goes, you want to open up a line of credit as a backup and just in case? And I go, yeah. So I opened up a line of credit for $100,000, never touched it, never needed it, just canceled it. But it was there. It was a backup. I'm not saying it was a bad thing or a good thing. It was just there. But I never needed to access it. It was just something that was there. So I never worried about that. I allowed it to happen. Now, that didn't happen easily because I've been through a whole lot of stuff before that got me to this place. I want you to understand that. You know that. I didn't have this magically, Zen-like ability to allow at that point. It had just, I'd been proven that the law of attraction was so flawless, but it only worked when I didn't get in the middle of it. I didn't understand the allowing piece, but when I just let things flow, it never failed. And that's what I've called now letting it flow, allowing. Just allow the process is in place. It is part of it. It is in my opinion, the most powerful law in the universe. It's a universal law, the law of attraction. Why does my dumb ass, want to interfere with the strongest law in the world in the universe?
When you phrase it that way, it does sound kind of dumb, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like, here I am. My goofy self is going to sit there and let's let the law of attraction, which is literally the law of the universe, do its thing. Why does Joel need to get involved and say, by the way, here's some suggestions? No, just let it happen.
That's kind of like saying, I'm going to outthink the law of gravity.
Yeah.
Well, really?
Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the energy that exists is intended to, it is the Tao of Allowing, in this case is the name of the book, but it is the order of the universe for these things to happen. That's the order of the universe. For these things the law of attraction is the order of the universe. Once you understand that, you can we often don't allow by our fear, like you were talking about, that we don't want to step out of the comfort zone. The word comfort zone sounds so intriguing. Well, this is a beautiful place. I have renamed the comfort zone the stagnant zone.
Oh, I like that. That's good. I like that.
Yeah, the stagnant zone is safe for a little while, but you know what happens when it becomes stagnant? It starts to rot and starts to smell.
Yeah.
It's never good.
Yeah, I've often said that the comfort zone is one of the most uncomfortable places you can be.
Yes, but we seek it so much because it again is programmed. So the art of allowing, the ability to allow, is really the hardest part of the law of attraction. We can envision what we want, we can envision that, but to truly understand, it isn't just like this lady that I was talking about. She just wanted one specific man, or one, this or that, like there isn't something that can deliver precisely every single thing. You only can attract, as I keep using the word, the essence or the theory of what you're after, the feeling of what you're after. You want a relationship, so let's attract a relationship, not a specific concept or, when somebody, I'm dealing with a young man right now, a really great guy, but he's broke up with his girlfriend, and she was his quote unquote soulmate, and he can't imagine ever finding another soulmate. And I said, you're not allowing the process, and it hurts. I'm not trying to minimize the hurt, but on the other side of this is you're blocking anything coming along. She clearly isn't your soulmate by the chain of events that has happened. So the idea that you're going to be pulling her back in is just not going to work. But yet he still can't let go of, she will not allow him to talk to her, and that's driving you crazy, versus being able to move on, heal, and then again, then attract what she represented, not necessarily her.
The concept of a soulmate is one of those fascinating attachment things. And the reason I say that is I think a large number of people believe that there's only one soulmate, like your client there. That's the only one possible soulmate. I think it was Mike Dooley. You referred to Mike earlier. I think it was Mike Dooley who pointed out if there was only one soulmate, chances are no matter how good you were at law of attraction, you never meet her, because there are 8 billion people on this planet. I mean, that's a lot to do in order to find the one person. But what if you have a bunch of possible soulmates? What if there are perhaps thousands of potential soulmates? All of them would be a great soulmate for you.
I agree. And that I saw this show one time, and I've don't remember the exact context of the show, but it was about this little school in Utah, and the senior class consisted of 6 people, and let's say it was 3 boys and 3 girls. I don't know for sure, but it helps my story at least.
Right.
So they're interviewing these 2 classmates that have been dating since 10th grade, are going to be getting married, and the girl said, "He's my soulmate." And I'm like, well, that was pretty good odds. I mean,
right.
You know, you're heterosexual, so you had 1 in 3 of shot. You know, there's 3 people there.
That was it.
And one of them happened to be your soulmate. Now, I'm hopeful they're still married or whatever.
Sure,
whatever. But the soulmate often it's situational. A soulmate is situational. It's where you're at. You know, the idea that there's energies that are attracting, and there's really countless people that could be your soulmate, I believe. But it's not built on what most people think. It isn't like it's pre-programmed for these 2 people to meet, you know, like some movie or whatever where they're going to meet and blah, blah, blah. But when you understand you're attracting a soulmate or somebody that matches your vibration, or you benefit off the vibration, you know, somebody who's an extrovert will often attract an introvert, or, you know, the symbiotic relationships that there's a lot of those scenarios, but when you're only open to one possibility, that's a great example of not allowing, because you're discounting everything else. It's just, you know, the friend of mine, he was divorced for several years, and he was, you know, he was just didn't even want to date. He didn't know how to find dates. He didn't want to do apps. So he was just really, people set him up, and they were never anybody he really enjoyed. So one night we were all out at dinner, and there's a lady sitting next to us, and we were talking about law of attraction, and she heard us talking about law of attraction, and she said, "Oh my goodness, I have just read The Law of Attraction by Abraham Hicks." So we start talking about, well, she clearly was interested in this guy. Now he wasn't tuned into that at all. And so, you know, anyway, I said, this was, I was trying to facilitate this because it was really clear to me. It wasn't clear to him. And I was there with a lady friend. So, I mean, she was clearly realized this was a good opportunity for her.
Right.
So, I said, I would I said, I have another, book I'd like to recommend. I said, you know, actually I left my cards. I said, "Steve, can you give her one of your cards?" And I said, just call that or whatever. I'll get you this book. And, she said, "Okay, thanks." Well, Steve, he said, "Well, that was sort of weird." He said, "Why didn't you just give me your phone number?" And I'm like, "Because I wanted you to realize she's attracted to you. She was throwing every signal on the planet to you, and you're totally shut down to that possibility." She's very attractive. She's talking about the law of attraction. She's very fit. We were talking about extra. I mean, it literally was this perfect match, and he didn't see it.
Right.
And so he, you know, she called, said, "Hey, Joel, want a number?" And he said, "Well, to be honest with you, Joel didn't really want to send you a book." He said, I find you, I just thought you're out of my league." And he's telling me that it sounded like me, because she goes, "Well, I was sort of calling you to actually say, maybe we want to get a cup of coffee. I don't care about the book either." They ended up getting married. They're doing great.
Really?
And,
that's fabulous.
But he was totally not allowing that energy to come through. He just had shut it down. That energy wasn't there.
It reminds me of one of my favorite methods, and this is a perfect kind of situation to apply it. And it's one that I'm saying this mainly to remind myself of it, as well as to include it in the conversation because it fits so well. But recently I met a woman who I've only met her a couple times, and I was very attracted, but there hasn't been an opportunity to follow through on it. And I was still dealing with the fallout of my divorce. So it was like not working. There was no way it was going to work at that time. And I kept thinking, wow, she was so great. I'd love to be able to connect with her and so forth. But I also found myself getting a little bit obsessive about it. And so I said to myself, well, what can I do about that? And I remembered this little trick, this little method. So I decided I wanted to have her or something better. just tagging on that little bit or something better at the other end of the wish or the wish list, depending on which it is, shifts the whole vibration.
Exactly.
So, I mean, she may end up showing up in my life again. I don't know. But even if she doesn't, if I can get somebody like her, somebody better, oh, hey, okay, I'll take that. That'd be good.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly, allowing this process to work, allowing the most fundamental practice in the universe, the most powerful law of the universe, allowing that to do what it does is we are the blockers of that. It is naturally flowing. It's wanting to connect. And so when you add those caveats or you add that idea, because when you're trying to attract someone, in a relationship, most often you're unintentionally attracting more loneliness because you're doing it from a place of being lonely. The energy of, I don't want to be lonely anymore, attracts the universe again responding, well, this guy wants to be lonely, so let's deliver more lonely to him, versus the idea of allow this intricate process to work. And it's flawless when you do. It's just I can't do it this way, or this doesn't apply to me, or I'm not smart enough, or, it just, there's a million ways of not allowing this thing to work. And
I love the way Mike Dooley expresses that first state that you're talking about, the feeling lonely thing, and attracting. I don't want to be lonely, and the way Mike Dooley would say it, if he was in his voice of the universe, he would say, "I promise you, I will not send you anybody at all. It's a lock. You can take it to the bank. I guarantee you, I'm not going to send anybody to you."
And that's exactly right. So the power of this concept of the really getting more focused on how do we allow these things to happen? How do we allow it versus the blocking of?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's where the tools come in, I think. That's why I like that particular tool. And that's not the only tool. I mean, there are hundreds of these tools you can use, but I love that particular one because it's a reminder to me. It's a reminder to all of us. We remind ourselves that just because we have our heart focused on X doesn't mean there can't be something better than X.
In fact, there's always something better.
There probably is. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's any disappointment I've had in my life, any loss, with the exception of my son TJ, any loss that I've ever experienced in my life, led me to something else. It brought me to another concept. It brought me to another idea. And the one of the most important things, and again, I'm huge Abraham Hicks, as you are. We use their material for many years.
Oh yeah.
Maybe the most important process of this is, as when Esther said, it is very important to know what you don't want. You have to go through a lot of what you don't want to get the idea of what you do want. And the idea that, when you figure out this is what I don't want, you're, oh my God, here we go again. No, it's literally part of the process. Allowing that to be part of the process, allowing what you don't want to happen, allowing yourself to be put out, like go out to the dinner that you didn't really want to go to, and you meet your person you end up marrying that just by chance, or you never know when you put yourself into action and allow whatever comes along with that. Without expectation, everything's not going to be a thing. It's like one of my clients had a flat tire one day, and he goes, "Well, I'm wondering what the flat tire means." And I said, "It might just mean you had a nail in your tire. That might be the extent of it." I mean, it could be something else, but let's also put it into account, like, the nail got in your tire. I mean, there's a possibility. So, it doesn't always have to be that, but be open and tuned in to, you don't want to state what you're wanting with the law of attraction. You don't want to put that frequency out there, and at the same time have a jamming frequency when it tries to return.
Yeah, jamming frequency.
Yeah.
That's a good phrase. That describes very nicely what attaching really is. Attaching is a jamming frequency.
Yeah, because you're just stuck on a really, like, there's only one way to do something, or there's only one way to achieve it. As long as that's your pathway, then you make it incredibly difficult for the universe to provide. It's, when if you were to go buy a lottery ticket tonight and you say, I have to, I want to spend all my evening attracting that one. You're now making the universe take a 1 in 200 or 300 million shot and against everybody else that's trying to manifest the exact same thing. And your odds are not really good. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's not really likely going to happen. However, if you could, come up with an idea, or you could, there's this country music singer I was hearing about. Don't know the whole story. Somehow I think it's political because of the people that are talking about it. But there's this country music singer that came up with a song like people called something like the People North of Richmond or the Men North of Richmond, and it's a really popular song. He's it's sort of an anti-politics song, and he claims it's not about any one party. It's just about they're all corrupt and all that.
Right.
And it's become very popular, actually, on both sides. It's really, I find it ironic. The left thinks it's about the right, and the right thinks it's about the left.
Of course, yeah.
So, but he's and it's the number one selling song in the world, and he doesn't have a label. He's selling it on. So this guy comes up with a song. He's like a local singer somewhere with moderate success at best. But he nails this one song, and he's in 1 week, I don't know his numbers, he's going to be worth several $1 million based on that one song.
Wow.
In 1 week.
That's really something.
It's amazing.
It's amazing what happens when you allow, because that's what that is. That is allowing.
That's all you're doing. You're allowing, and you're not. And that's why I've always said, like, kids are really good at using the law of attraction.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't know how to not allow. They just they don't have the script in their head of what could go wrong or what will go wrong, or this has never worked before, so it's clearly not going to work now. That all these things that keep blocking us are if you look at the odds of I always explain this to people, the odds of me being where I was August 17th, 1995, when I was homeless, nowhere to go, the whole story, nothing. To be where I'm at today, I can't calculate there's chains of events that happened in there that are nothing but miracles. And there's more than one miracle in my mind that took place to get me to where I'm at. And they all had to fall perfectly. They all had to come into order. And that's how I got here. So in fact, it's so absurd. I wasn't blocking it because I was like, well, that's just ridiculous. I mean, sometimes you get so absurd, you don't even have the energy to block it or the thought to block it because you think there's no way that could possibly happen. But it did.
Yeah. That very nicely summarizes what that roller coaster experience is that I was referencing earlier. And it's the experience that you can either be afraid of or you could be exhilarated by it. Or there might even be an in-between spot. I haven't quite figured that part out yet. But I know that you can be terrified and I know you can be exhilarated. And the challenge is to let go of the terror so you can be exhilarated. It takes practice. It probably takes a number of repetitions, to go through stuff like that a number of times before you finally start to get comfortable with what happens. Comfortable enough that you can enjoy the ride, that you can enjoy that crazy cyclone of stuff going through.
One of the analogies I like to, when I was working for my dad many, many years ago in the insurance agency, I cannot describe how bad I hated that job.
You tried very nicely, I have to say.
We could do a show, me just coming in with adjectives of how bad I hated that job. Okay. So it was literally the worst job for my ADHD brain on the planet. So and not only was I terrible about it, I was stealing money from the company. It was really a bad time. So every Sunday night, I dreaded Monday because I had to go back to the place I hated so bad. I really hated that place. And so I would get a headache. I'd feel terrible. I would dread. So for years, I worked in the agency for 8 years, and probably 6 of those years, I hated every Monday of my life. So life happens. I go through a lot of stuff, and many, many years later, I find myself in my life now. Well, I had this inherent belief that I hate Mondays. I actually now realize I love Mondays. This is the start of a new week, the business week. I do better than a normal business day. I love the structure of Mondays. I love the feeling of a new start. Monday is by far my favorite day of the week now. Always. I love Mondays. So it took years of reprogramming to love Mondays, but because I had the narrative, and when somebody say, well, Oh, a typical Monday. I go, yep, it's been incredible. You're right. It's a typical Monday. And that's my typical Monday now. It really is. But there were times where Mondays were the worst. So we get that built into our head, and that's part of not allowing these concepts to play. The Tao of Allowing is simply the natural order of things is to allow the law of attraction to work. That's the natural order of things. What's blocking it, as we keep saying, is our ability to allow the natural order to take place, because we have that programming you're talking about. That oh my God, this is because change. We're programmed to believe change is scary, change is terrible. So that's blocking. It's not, change. You can't have the life you want unless you're willing to give up parts of the life you currently have to obtain the new life you want. But yet the fear of that scares the hell out of people.
Embrace the change. I think that's the mantra for today's show. And
Sure.
as usual, we touch on, we've been touching on this topic throughout the show, this Tao of Allowing. And as usual, it's just nailed. I'm loving everything we've been talking about. I hope listeners have loved it as well. But thank you very much, Joel. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.